Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us bright and early. I hope everybody's sufficiently nourished and caffeinated. My name's Stu Sneidman from Harvard University, and I am here with my colleagues Amy Deschaines and Carolyn Casey to talk about Harvard's Reimagining Discovery initiative, and more specifically, our first efforts to really integrate AI into collections discovery. So as academic research libraries, no surprise, I think one of our biggest motivating challenges is to match researchers and students with the content they need to conduct consequential research and high-quality instruction. And this amidst what feels like an unfathomable amount of information. But I think the distinctive role of libraries in this endeavor is to connect them to resources they can trust, and in the context of trust. Of course, the scope of content we all hold in our institutions is really massive, and if it isn't massive enough, the discovery challenge extends well beyond the content that we all hold, the books and the articles that we license. And our stakeholders have told us we need to do better. Our users are telling us that we need to do better. Amy leads the User Research Center at Harvard, and they've done some really interesting research over the past couple of years that's really informed our approach. It's intimidating for new users to know where to begin. Finding materials at Harvard is onerous. I'd rather use Google. I get overwhelmed with inconsistencies in how information is presented. So we really take this feedback seriously, and it drives us. So as we began to envision, frankly, a major rethink of our discovery environment at Harvard, which I'll admit to you, I think is characterized by too many separate, bespoke, and specialized systems that can often confuse our users. November 2022 happened. And this latest generation of AI tools started to transform how we, and importantly our users, think about our interactions with online information. So we invited ourselves to think about how AI might be applied to library discovery. We started with the assertion or thesis that our time-honored approach to search, type in keyword, get long list of results, narrow with filters or facets, is already or quickly approaching past its prime. Future users, or really current users, are beginning to expect interactions with natural language and results that are semantically and contextually maybe even aware. So we were fortunate to get a chance to kind of experiment and test some of these assertions and theories as part of a small innovation grant program at Harvard that we participated in late 2023. We did a 3-month spike or experiment that we called Talk with HOLLIS. HOLLIS is Harvard's online catalog, where we attempted to apply a generative chat AI interface to our catalog. The project was fast. As I said, it was really just a spike, 3 months. And we expressed three major goals. One, to build some skills on our team in applying AI technologies to library systems. 2, to produce something that we could use to test some of our theories with our users. And 3, to help us decide on a path forward and whether or not, or how AI would play a role in that. So the all 3 goals satisfied, and the Talk with HOLLIS effort led us to the development of a broader vision that we are calling Reimagining Discovery. We've given it conceived of it on a 3-year timeline. I suspect it will go longer than that. And the scope of the effort is pretty ambitious. It's considering the full array of information and content types, and will likely affect all of our existing systems. The ultimate goal and the focus is to improve user experience and the effectiveness of library discovery systems. And we know that this will require some combination of retiring systems and replacing and enhancing others. And all the while, a kind of an intentional aspect of this work is going to be experimenting with uses of AI to enhance the search experience. So as our first effort, we decided to tackle not the catalog, but to address the difficulty that our users have in finding the hidden treasures that Harvard holds in its special collections and its distinctive collections. These collections are, of course, spread across a variety of systems. They are unevenly described, and they're hard to find unless you know what you're looking for. So with that opening context, I want to hand it over to Amy and Carolyn to talk about Collections Explorer.
Good morning, everyone. I am Amy, and I lead the user experience team at Harvard Library. And for this project, we are leading the strategy, design, and testing work. In addition to that evaluative research, we also conduct exploratory research on a regular basis with students about their research habits. And unsurprisingly, a big focus in the last 2 years has been about how tools like ChatGPT and other generative AI chatbots are impacting academic work. So this is from a survey that we conducted just this fall. And we are really seeing that there's just this expectation and really preference for natural language search tools. So this is over, the majority of students who took this survey, they are saying that they agree with the statement that generative AI chatbots reduce my reliance on traditional search tools like Google and HOLLIS. We're also seeing from our web analytics growing traffic to our website and HOLLIS, our discovery system, coming from places like ChatGPT. So in addition to this recent survey, Stu also mentioned some of the feedback. You saw some quotes before, but there were 2 studies that really informed where we're going with Collections Explorer. We did an interview series with special collections users in 2023 to inform our implementation of ArcLight, but there were insights from that and our evaluative testing of the Talk with HOLLIS experiment that are really, again, informing some of the features and things we're developing in Collections Explorer. So 3 key findings are that users wanted more explanation when they were using the Talk with HOLLIS chatbot about why they were getting the results that they did. They also wanted recommendations for related materials or search terms. They spend a lot of time trying different keyword combinations. So they were like, I wish this could just give me the right prompt to use for what I'm looking for. And also that just confirming that new special collections researchers are unsure how to start and want something that's perceived as a little bit easier. So realizing we couldn't start this project alone, we partnered with Mozilla.ai, which is an AI startup that's part of the Mozilla Foundation and really aligned with our values of building open and ethical AI. So for 3 months, that team helped us refine our approach, develop our technical framework, and build our AI development skills in-house. So it was a brief collaboration, but it really gave us a boost to move forward confidently with the work. We held a 2-day kickoff workshop with that team and stakeholders to refine our scope and really develop what our product strategy is for the first phase of this work. So this is our product strategy for Collections Explorer. We use this framework whenever we're building something new, and it really helps align a team on the goals and the vision. So for this product, we are thinking of the primary audience as a person who wants to take their first step to easily explore special collections. So you'll notice it is a person, and easily explore special collections is the main thing we're going to enable them to do. The goals are to enable folks to conduct natural language searching of special collections, offer AI-generated related prompts and item-level summaries. That's highlighted because that is directly informed by the research. And then provide access to special collections materials. Our value proposition is sort of basically a tagline for this that unites our audience and goals. This tool helps you take the first step in finding Harvard Library's unique materials. So first step kind of indicates this is something for maybe someone who's new to special collections. For validation, that just means the content and the features, the components we're going to have. We're going to have prompt examples on the homepage, guiding text, and those AI features. And finally, we're going to have measuring. We'll have analytics and successful usability testing. So another key aspect of the project is keeping the work user-centered throughout to ensure that we build something that's usable and useful. So a couple of things we're going to do when we launch, will have an embedded feedback survey. We are doing usability testing before we launch. We're doing several kinds of testing with both Harvard ID holders and members of the public. We'll also be testing for accessibility, make sure we're implementing analytics before launch. And we also have integrated student representatives for insights and outreach. So these are our 3 product insights interns who are fabulous. We meet every other week with them on Zoom, where they meet with project team members and stakeholders. They also complete asynchronous tasks like evaluating outputs from the LLMs we're testing. And it's a mix of special collections, people who have special collections experience, and folks who are just really excited about the treasures of the library. They're compensated as student workers, and they also give feedback on preliminary designs. So even before we build anything, we are taking an approach of UX design. So this is just a prototype picture. There's no code behind this. We build it in Figma. And then over on the right, you'll see comments from our stakeholders, development team members, and our UX designer, just making sure everyone understands the expectations of what the interaction is going to be like. And we're actually building, if you've seen other Harvard library systems, we're using a design system, so this should be familiar to users. So this is a static preview, but I'm going to hand it off to Carolyn to show you a live preview of Collections Explorer.
Thanks, Amy. So I'm Carolyn. I'm the project manager for Reimagining Discovery. So after defining that product strategy, that's always helpful, our technical team got to work to build out a testable product. We did that in about 3.5 months, so we could test it with our end users. That was around the beginning of October. So right now, I'm going to narrate a demo of Collections Explorer. Okay, here we go. So I searched this natural language prompt, collections related to documented types of flowers from ecosystems throughout history, and I see these top 2 results. But I want to see both collection and item level results, so I click that toggle. The finding aid is still the top result here, so I want to know why I got it. It tells me it's relevant because there are over 4,300 models representing 780 plant specimens in this collection. I go look at the finding aid. The result makes sense to me. I'm a librarian. The word flower and flowers is everywhere in this finding aid. So I go back and I look at this digital collection and I'm thinking, why did this come up? So I click on that again. It tells me that this is relevant because botanical illustrations often feature flowers. So I go look at the collection overview for this digital collection. Interestingly, the word flower, ecosystem history, not in this metadata or collection overview page at all. I'll tell you about that a little bit later. You might also try feature is different searches that I could try. I try one of them, click the toggle again. Some of the results have changed, some may be the same. I decide I don't really want to look at any of those. So I look at the need articles or books. It transforms that natural language query into a keyword query because that's all that works in our Primo instance. And I get these secondary resources that I could look at. Okay, so that's Collections Explorer. And I'm going to tell you how this works, what makes this possible. You wouldn't be here if we weren't talking about AI. So the major features are based on 2 different types of AI. One is an embedding model that's used for searching and finding things. We call it semantic search. And the other that we use to power the system are large language models for those 3 other features. So what is semantic retrieval? This is different from library systems we're all used to because it helps you find what you're looking for even if you don't use the exact words. So metadata records are processed through an embedding model. It converts text into vectors, which are numerical representations of the text. And that's shown here by these blue-gray dots. Similar vectors are then stored near one another in a vector database. Here you can see the word apple on the lower right is near the picture of an apple, but that's also not terribly far from the logo for the tech company. So when a user enters a query, that query also gets embedded by the same embedding model. And those vectors are matched using a search called nearest neighbor. So it finds related concepts based on the meaning of the terms. So for example, this shows that it brings back cat, even though the user was searching for kitten. In our demo, you can see that botanical illustration collection was retrieved despite lacking any of the keywords like flowers or ecosystem from my query. So as shown by the star here, this is important to build trust. We're very transparent about what we're using behind the scenes. The embedding model that we used for the sort of alpha version that we talked about is listed here. So large language models, those are the three other features. Those are powering the three other features that are starred here. The first one I'll talk about is the yellow star, which kind of showed you why something was relevant. So how does this work? As we all know, large language models are computational models capable of language generation. So for the why did I get this result, the system takes the user's question, the metadata from the result that they clicked on, and something called a system prompt, and passes all of that information to the LLM. The LLM here that we're using is Mistral Small. That was chosen after what Amy had discussed. So the students actually, we developed a way to, get a whole bunch of queries and answers together from the 12 models we had access to through Amazon Bedrock. The students evaluated them based on quality and tone. They came back to us and said Mistral Small is working the best. So I thought that was a pretty cool part of the project. So that's what we're using. Oh, and I also like to point out here the system prompt, because I often hear the word prompt engineering or the terms prompt engineering, and in library spaces, I like to make clear, are you talking about end user prompting? Or are you talking about a system prompt? And sometimes people look at me and don't know what I'm talking about. So system prompt, it's a fixed prompt that developers create to provide context and instructions to the model. We use these prompts to constrain the LLM's answers. It acts as a guardrail because we want to ensure the LLM is returning helpful information. We are a library, after all. We can continually hone these prompts as we gather more feedback, and we actually honed it multiple times before we went into testing. That was a lot of fun. So next, I want to talk about the two other features powered by an LLM. So this is the You Might Also Try, which was the suggested searches on the right-hand side of the screen, and the view results in HOLLIS. This is a little bit simpler. It's just taking the user's question and a system prompt, different obviously for each feature here, but passes that to the LLM. For this one, we're using Claude 3 Haiku. We found it works best for those types of tasks. I think that was all I was going to say there. Yep. Okay. Here's a diagram of the system you saw in the demo. And on parts highlighted in yellow are what we need to change in order to go into production. We plan to put this into production in the fall of 2025. Don't hold me to that, Stu. So the demo system you saw is actually a small amount of metadata. It's a couple hundred finding aids. It was about 40,000, I think, metadata records from digitized collections and some other sort of web pages that describe collections. We're currently building the metadata ingest pipeline and implementing a vector database that will support tens of millions of records and hybrid searching. Amy will get to that in a minute. But looking forward beyond launch, we're going to add in some full text from our digitized collections. We're going to add metadata for other types of objects, and we are designing the system so we can easily swap models and future-proof it since the AI landscape is moving so quickly. So Amy's going to talk about all the usability that's informing this work.
I'm back. Hello. So we conducted usability testing with about a dozen students and external researchers on the QA instance of Collections Explorer, and our insights related to the AI features. So the AI features tested really high. People really responded positively, so positively that they did not want the "why did I get this result" summary to be behind a click. we heard people saying, I would just open all of these, right? So we're not going to put that behind a click. That was really helpful information to help them evaluate the search results. And they also really liked the you might also try suggested prompts. But right now, when we first launched, it was basically generating from the AI model. So it was suggesting things that maybe weren't relevant for academic researchers or an academic collection. Like, for instance, someone searched for musical scores and they had a related prompt of where can I download free MP3s online, right? Not related. The other thing was making sure we are really transparent about which features have AI-generated text. So this is a big ask. People just want to understand when they're seeing metadata versus when they're seeing AI-generated summaries and suggestions. And we're also going to be making some adjustments to how the semantic search works and removing some of the non-relevant terms from the prompt that the user puts in. For instance, if they put in collections in Widener Library, it was looking for the words in Widener Library in the collection information. So we are creating a list of stop words to ignore those kinds of entries and get better results. And actually, that's something the students will help us think about the kinds of prompts and what kinds of stop words we might need to implement. The other thing with our search results, definite preference for individual items. You saw Carolyn click on the toggle that originally it was including collection level results, and then the toggle click included individual items. Definite preference for individual items. People saw the collection level results and thought, this is going to take me a lot of time to review this. I prefer the individual item. Also having direct access to the digital version of the item when it exists, and the ability to filter on digital item. And that was another thing we learned through the testing process. When we first launched, we didn't have any filters. It was, you could redo your prompt, you could click on those suggested prompts. But the one thing we heard both from our primary audience of casual users and secondary audience is that the filters actually help them understand the scope of the collection, and seeing how many repositories there are, for instance, gives them a sense. And then with researchers, we heard that it helps build trust. That's just something they expect to see in an academic library search tool. So we're keeping the filters minimal. This is based on user feedback and also based on analytics from HOLLIS. So we're going to have a digitized, non-digitized filter, year, repository, and language. So these insights are really shaping the next phase of the work as we update our designs, refine the semantic search and generative AI features, and we'll be conducting another round of user testing in the spring before launching in the fall. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stu with some closing thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Amy and Carolyn. So by way of quick wrap up, I want to highlight a few key areas of emphasis. And also future considerations as we navigate this new terrain. So just a couple things. A reminder that as libraries, we have this distinctive role in discovery, and that is our commitment to trust and authenticity. So it's more important than ever now that we are starting to think about how AI will be part of our library systems to focus on openness and transparency, and we're trying to do that in the build out of this system. Second, as you can see, our approach to reimagining discovery, and for example, this system, is driven by our users, understanding user behavior through user research, and designing our systems to be kind of fiercely user-centered. So third, so these next two are big because they're real unknowns, right? Building AI systems at scale requires new infrastructure that is really expensive. And we don't yet have a full picture of what that looks like from a cost perspective. We're learning as we go, but the costs will likely mean that we can't, and frankly, we shouldn't be doing this alone. So what collaborative infrastructure, what collaborative development looks like, we've experienced that in the library world in the past, and we're eager to collaborate with many of you in the future. And then the last thing I'll mention is the environmental costs. This is something that's important to our team and also our library staff. We talk about it a lot. We obviously can't solve it, but we think it's important to be mindful of the environmental impacts of the growth of these systems and acknowledge it, and to the extent possible, make smart choices, whether it's our architecture or features or whatever, with these kinds of impacts in mind. So as others have noted, this technology is moving really fast. It's hard to predict anything beyond, 3-6 months. But we're excited and grateful to be able to think about this creatively with you all and consider the future of AI in discovery. So with that, I'll say thank you and open it up for questions. This is when we do this.
Yeah.
Right? I thought about bringing my sunglasses. Any questions?
Hi, thanks. I really appreciate the presentation. I'm Mike Furlow from HOLLIS. The question I wanted to ask is, at the very start, you made a clear point of emphasizing that access to trustworthy information was a critical part of the mission. And I was curious about how you're thinking about trustworthiness, evaluating trustworthiness or pointing towards trustworthiness in this discovery process. It seems like when users ask for understanding why they're being shown that result, it's a way to help them evaluate that, but that's also about relevance too. And so I'm curious about how you might approach that question of evaluation of trust and in addition to relevance through the process of this work. So.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. Okay, I'll start and I'll let Amy and Carolyn chime in if they'd like. But yeah, you're right. I think so. It was interesting when we I'll talk a little bit about Mozilla, because when we picked Mozilla as a partner, this was actually their kind of big narrative, right? There's a lot of AI organizations. Mozilla Foundation, has a history of thinking about open. And when we talked to them about partnering on this, one of their key goals was to think about systems that can actually measure concepts like AI systems, concepts like trust and authenticity. And that's really, really tricky. And of course, that collaboration ended a little early for us, but some of the insights that we gained were, for example, the feature that you mentioned is a really key one. And that is the kind of why did I get this result? Second, the embedding of both library staff and students on the project team to kind of help us make some judgments as to whether or not we were doing the right things. We have considered kind of in the future some other kind of mechanisms or concepts, whether that's about kind of scores, which are really, really hard, or flags that help us try to kind of measure mathematically the extent to which we trust the results. I don't know if Amy and Carolyn want to add.
Yeah, I think the point I would build on too is working with library staff to help evaluate the results and also benchmarking them against other systems we have that we know people trust, right? So using our discovery system as a benchmark, but then also staff who are really close to the collections, having them evaluate the first 5 results they get when they try different queries for their areas of expertise.
Is that Suzanne?
Hello, friends. Yes, it is.
All right. This was partially your idea, so it better be a softball.
And I'm super excited to see how far you guys have gotten. It looks so great. I'm really pleased. My curiosity is about just my past experience working on some digital projects at Harvard. And when we would emphasize ease of use for our starting researchers, we often got pushback from our more sophisticated curators and users. So I just wondered if that conversation is in the mix here too, if people are having similar skepticism about using AI and making it quote unquote too easy for the user.
Yeah, I think I would, thank you for the question. I do think we have, these two audiences of the casual user who's interested and the advanced researcher who uses this for their livelihood. But I think for this, because we are saying we have these two audiences, but for basic feature decisions, we're thinking about the primary audience as that casual user. So rather that's similar to like the reason we started with no filters and like figure out what filters are really useful. And we did have a mix of those two user groups in the testing, right? So we're just picking the filters that are the most important rather than giving every filter we could possibly give. But yeah, I definitely think we're still having those conversations with staff. We have open meetings about this project on a quarterly basis, and we have structured ways for staff to give feedback as well.
Hi, I'm Bridget Almas from Lyrasis. I just had a question about you mentioned collaborative infrastructure and collaborative approaches to handling the costs. Can you say a little bit more about what you think that might look like in practice? How would we share the costs, and what would that underlying infrastructure need to be?
I don't know. I just want to be candid. I mean, I think in our history as a community, we've shared costs and effort in building collaborative open source. There are other kind of interesting models of shared data like Pod, which is also kind of a form of shared infrastructure. We're thinking a lot about how we work with vendors who host AI infrastructure and the costs of that. This project is a little interesting because we're focusing first on what are Harvard's unique kind of collections, although all of our institutions have unique collections, and we want to make those available to the commons. So I'm open to your ideas, and I think this is the community that will figure it out. So hopefully me dodging the answer is a prompt for us to have further discussion about how we kind of share in this effort. And we'll take one more.
Lauren DeMonte, EL. Can you speak a little bit more about the product insight interns? It feels like they have a strong hand in shaping the product here, and that's really exciting. What did you look for in terms of recruitment? How did you think about diversity, inclusion, equity? Are you thinking about expanding these roles in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So we did recruit these students from a participant pool we have. So we have a participant pool of around 800 students that we go to regularly with asks for, complete a survey, volunteer for interviews. And these were students who had participated in an initial either survey or interview for Talk with HOLLIS. So we reached out to say like the 200 students who did that, and then asked them how would they be, what would they think they could contribute to a project like this. So we're looking for students who were using AI actively for their academic work, sort of had either an interest or had used special collections. And then we just had interviews like you would for any other student worker position. And I would say like they do have an active role, but we're not relying just on them, right? So they're kind of our like insiders. So then if we might have a question about what they would call something, and then we'll test that kind of thing. So it's sort of for the more hands-on, time-consuming work, they're our go-to group. Yeah.
And I see that we're at -3, and no more silhouettes by microphones. So we will say thank you.